Sweeney. And Christy Salters. What a reception. And introducing your assistant, Christy. Champ?
Yes.
So, David, I want to start with you and what brought you to this project and what the collaboration with the screenwriter Mara Folks looked like and how this came to the big screen.
Thank you so much for that. That's, oh man, I'm really emotional. Christy's story was just brought to me one day as I was between movies and it was incredible, and equally incredible was that I'd never heard it before. Mira Folks is my sweetheart of many years, and this is the first time we've ever actually worked together. And so we just thought we'd give it a try, see how writing together felt. She's a filmmaker herself, has made lots of stuff, and it just felt right. And then we met Christy, and I just started feeling righter. It's just like what I knew of Christy from the little research I'd done was that there was a kind of ferocious personality there. And then as soon as you meet Christy, you realise that there's a really beautiful soul in there, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but an almost fragile one as well. Like there's a vulnerability there. And I just went, okay, all the ingredients are here. Let's go.
Sydney, this isn't the first time you've played a person based on Champ is dying. Yeah, Q&A over, Champ's out. This isn't the first time you've played a real life person, but you really transform into this role, and you have to look credible and comfortable in that boxing ring. I want to talk a little bit about the training aspect of it, and then I want to talk about kind of how you got into the mental space and your collaboration with Christy.
Yeah, first, I want to thank all of you guys for being here, because it's not possible without you guys, so thank you. And thank you for helping us spread Christy's story and awareness, because as you can tell, she is such a special and incredible human being, and her story deserves to be told. I forgot the question, but playing Christy, you are absolutely incredible, and I'm so honored. I'm gonna cry. Oh my god. You're so inspirational, and so being able to have her by my side during this process was a dream, but then also just scary too, because you're like, oh my gosh, like we're doing this in front of her, and I wasn't quite sure. I mean, she's the greatest boxer in the entire world, and I'm having to do hooks and hits, and I'm like, I hope I'm doing this right. But it was a dream come true as an actor, as a person. It was incredible. I hope I answered. I don't know if I did. The transformation, I got that part. I trained for like 2-3 months before. I had boxing coach, I had weight trainers, I had nutritionists. I trained 3 times a day, every day. And then while I was filming, I trained as well.
And a lot of Chick-fil-A.
A lot of Smuckers. A lot of Smuckers, a lot of milkshakes, a lot of protein shakes. But it was incredible being able to completely embody such a powerful woman. I felt even stronger. It was truly inspiring.
The film is so great at showing the high wire act that Christy had to walk at all times in terms of keeping her sexuality close to the chest, being extremely disciplined to dominate the field, being a bombastic trash talker to establish herself in a sport that was associated with men, but then at the same time projecting a quite hyper feminine look in her interviews, and even being a traditional kind of wife in some of the interviews to balance out what was happening at home. And I wonder, Christy and Cindy, but also David, how did you? That's a lot of balls in the air. That's a lot of things to inhabit as a performer. How did you get into that headspace? And I think also, Christy, you navigated that stuff so women athletes nowadays don't have to juggle all of that. So how did you get in that space to be that multifaceted of a character?
Wow. Well, there were, as you said, a lot of balls we had to juggle, and a lot of personalities. And Christy Martin, the boxer, was really just a persona. Very bombastic, very egotistical. And but that's not really who I am. I am actually very shy and reserved, and want to help everyone that I possibly can in the boxing world. I wanted to knock everybody out that I possibly could. So I have those two parts of my personality. And I think that that's why Sydney Sweeney's doing such an awesome job, because she got to be this totally different person that none of you expected. She wasn't the beautiful, sexy Sydney. She was the tough, rugged Christy in this movie, and I think it's awesome. I mean, she
David, when it comes to actually the writing of it and depicting all of those different facets on screen, was it a challenge?
Yeah, it really was. It's like, 20, especially, 20 years of somebody's life. And as you say, there are lots of, there's a sporting pioneer story, there's this confused or oppressed sexuality story, there's obviously an intimate partner violence story, a coercive control story, and yeah, every scene you go, okay, where are each of these things sitting? But I mean, most challenging of all was knowing that at some point Christy was going to have to first read it and then watch it, and I know I can speak for Mira, I wish she was here, but she's not, she's in Greece for some reason. For Mira and I, we were terrified. I mean, I've made movies about real people before. You know, one was about a person, actually a few. A couple where I didn't want to have any real contact with the subject. One, you know, the king where, you know, the guy was 500 years dead. But this is the first time I've actually had, you know, someone who was around a lot, and maybe I went into it naively, and then I suddenly went off. Oh fuck, I need to be really careful here. I have a very real responsibility to get this right and listen and take notes. So thank you, Christy, for no notes.
Ben. I want to make sure I phrase this correctly. This is a complex role, and it's a very dark role, being Jim, who kind of starts out as a Christy's cheerleader and mentor, and then becomes controlling and violent towards her. How did you develop this? I assume that you didn't speak to Jim, but how did you kind of get into this role?
It was discussed. Every actor has a different door. I was curious to speak with Jim, and then when I spoke with Dave and Christy, it felt disrespectful in some capacity, and we were going to find another door. So we discussed the subject of coercive control and domestic violence at depth. I spoke with some previous friends, and spoke with Dave and Sid, and we just corkscrewed into what is frightfully not Christy's triumphant career, but those that do struggle at home quietly. And that was of the utmost importance that we honored that as best we could.
Katie, you play Lisa, and at the very end of the film, you bring some levity to what's a really difficult and horrible situation. And your relationship, Sydney, and your relationships, it evolves throughout the film, and it starts out as quite adversarial, but there's always kind of that opening where Lisa's quite generous, and gives a lot of grace to Christy despite how she's been treated. So how did you two work on that dynamic, knowing that, you know, ultimately you go from being sparring in the ring to, you know, being partners and being quite supportive of her situation?
I mean, I had the amazing opportunity to talk to Lisa, and she kind of filled me in on who she was as a person. And the thing, where is she? There she is. And one thing that she said to me that stuck out to me, and something that I hope to also be this type of person, is someone that's very intuitive and who can see what somebody's going through. And she mentioned, you know, training with Christy, seeing that she's so successful but seemed so sad. And it's one of those things too that she likes. She's a person that is joyful and brings light out of people. And it kind of just falls into place when you're across from somebody who's going through this moment, and you want to bring light to them in some way, one way or another. So the first scene that we shot, you were at the hospital, and Christy was there, and Lisa was there, and I was like, if I do this wrong, I'm gonna get beat up. I don't want to these women. But you were walking around with the little thing, whatever it's called, the walker. And I was like, okay, that's who that person is. That's cool, but you could see the pain in your eyes. And I just wanted to get that pain out. So I don't know, it was just, that's where we started from. And then we just kind of worked our way backwards from there.
Sydney, how did you develop that dynamic and that bond with Katie as Lisa?
Well, like Katie said, we had the privilege of having both Lisa and Christy there, so being able to see their dynamic and how much fun you guys have and how you grew. I think that we really were like, okay, that's the ending point, that's fine, the way into it. And I mean, Katie's absolutely incredible to work with. I felt that, like you said, you looked deep inside me and she completely understood everything that Christy wasn't saying. And I think that was a really beautiful relationship that maybe Christy wasn't even aware of in the beginning.
Let's talk about Don King. A formidable person to have to embody. Can you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. You know what? Don King is just someone I've always wanted to play. You know? I know, man. Go figure. Just a titan, you know? Legendary. Just soak up all the oxygen, right? But someone who's surely connected with joy and levity. I think, for me, anyway, that kind of energy, that lightheartedness, but at the same time, brutally honest and no filter, it was, you know, it was amazing to play. Thank you, David.
Christy and Sydney, especially Christy, with the good work you've been doing since this has happened and the advocacy you've been doing, what do you hope people take away from this film?
Well, I made a deal with God from the hospital bed that if He let me live, I would help as many people as possible. Actually, I said one person before I died, and then the arrogant me said, no, I want to help one person every day before I die, to not be in a situation that I was in. And I hope that this movie does just that. I mean, as David mentioned, there's different stereotypes that are touched on, and just being the underdog. If I'm a coal miner's daughter, if a coal miner's daughter from 500 people town in southern West Virginia can make it, anybody can.
I hope that people walk away and are just absolutely inspired by Christy, which I think they will be.
I think they were. I mean, boxing films have such a rich legacy in cinema, and I think you've just added another one to the pantheon of greats. Thank you so much for bringing us to Toronto.